Welcome to Old Classic Car, and in this collection we're looking at TVR cars. And to begin with, almost at the very beginning of the story, this is TVR number 2 on display at the Lakeland Motor Museum. This was built by Trevor Wilkinson in 1952. It's got an 1172cc Ford engine hideaway under that louvered bonnet, various items of Morris 8 as well, the rear axle and the steering, so a bit of a bitzer in the true style of self-built cars. Now, over to Alton Park, and we've got a side-on, slightly high-up view of a TVR Grand Tourer Mark III. Most of these were powered by XMGB B-Series engines, 1800cc engines, and they go quite well as well, I imagine. Slightly more recent car now, we've got R36TOK. This is a TVR Chimera from 1997, powered by the 3.9 litre V8 Rover engine, as so many TVRs of this era were. There's another very similar car parked alongside it as well, also in dark blue. At the same gathering, this was just a few months ago, we've got a DTE 684J. This is a March 1971 registered TVR Vixen. And what a beautiful little car that is, fibreglass bodied as nearly all TVRs were, apart from the first couple of cars in the early 1950s. But they soon switched to fibreglass, and here we've got a side-on view, a better look at this 71 Vixen. Really smart little car, 1600cc Ford engine hiding away under that bonnet. These were built from 1967 to 1973. There's a rear three-quarter view of the same car, fixed rear window on these. Some of the later models had a lift-up rear hatch, but that wasn't the case on this era of Vixen. You'll notice the rear lights. The earlier cars had the circular Banderbomb type Ford Cortina Mark I lamp assemblies. To an evening car meet now, and two photographs of G347DEJ. That is a TVR 350i, again Rover V8 powered. Over 1,000 of these were built in all, so these wedge TVRs of the 1980s were a really good seller for TVR back in the day. Built in Blackpool, of course. There's a rear three-quarter view of the same car at a bit of a sports and classic car breakfast meet that took place just a few months ago, actually. Very popular cars back in the day, and still a really strong following for old TVRs to this day. Okay, and talking of gatherings of TVRs, here we are at Alton Park in 2022, and this is a TVR club stand. Quite a few different TVRs in evidence here. We've got a couple of Chimeras in the foreground, a later car in the foreground, and next to it a slightly earlier one. The later cars have the faired-in headlamps. Much earlier again, same venue though, OCK 781P at Alton Park. This is an October 75 registered 1600M. That's got the 1.6 litre Ford Kent engine tucked away under that fiberglass bonnet there. This one's also got a vinyl roof and a full width sunroof as well. Still at Alton Park, we've got a trio of TVRs here, and in the foreground GN04MGZ, which, unless I'm very much mistaken, is a TVR T350. These were built from 2002 to 2006 with a Speed 6 engine under its bonnet. Targa and coupe versions were available. A very similar colour but much older. There's this glorious race-prepared Grand Tourer Mark III. What a cracking little car that is. Probably a bit of a squeeze to fit in. Not very big doors on these cars, quite a short wheelbase as well, which makes the handling quite exciting, I would imagine, on the limit. But yeah, what a cracking car. There's another view of the same car, this time with the bonnet raised. You can just about see the B-Series engine there. Three lights either side at the back. The top one on the near side appears to be a little bit on the loose side. Maybe it's had a little nerf or something like that, or maybe it was just having the bulb replaced, who knows. But yeah, great little cars. Somewhat more recent, W666 TVR. This is a TVR Tuscan. Now this is currently showing as being sawn, so maybe it's off for the winter, I don't know. This had the 4 litre Speed 6 engine. Now these were built from 1999 to 2006. The Speed 6 engine was an engine of TVR's own design, whereas their previous cars, such as this Chimera that we photographed last year, 2022, had the Rover V8 engine. Next up in this collection of TVR photographs, another one of the wedge cars, and a variety of TVRs in the background there as well. This is a 1980s example. I'm guessing it's a 350i, I think. Yep, October 1987 this car. These were built all the way from 1983 through to 89, so a very, very popular car in TVR's showrooms back then. Now to race retro, we've got this white Tuscan. This is a V8 powered car. It started life, I believe, as a Vixen, but then it was uprated to Tuscan V8 power, and very effective it is too, by all accounts from what I've read. What a cracking car that is. A pair of TVR Chimeras here, attending a breakfast meeting just a few months ago. We've got a silver one and a dark coloured blue, I think, pulling in just behind it. Great cars, fiberglass body of course, but you do have to watch the steel chassis underneath. The body can survive, but the chassis are a bit prone to rusting. They were powder coated. And here we have CLM 100H, another TVR Vixen. That's a London registered car, registered sometime after November 1969. You don't see too many of these. These are the fixed head long wheelbase TVR Cerberus. This maroon example is a 4-litre Speed 6. Like I say, this was TVR's own design of engine. There were a few teething problems, I believe, early days. They also did a Speed 8, a V8 powered car, and they did propose to put a Speed 12 into production, but that never made it into production. Here, TVR 999. That's a really smart little car, one of the S series cars. This one dates to 1990 and has a 3-litre V6 engine. I do like these. If you're not into your Larry TVRs, I think these will make a very, very neat purchase indeed. Back to the wedge, and we have a mid to late 1980s wedge here. I'm not quite sure which model this is. I'm guessing probably another 350i, going off the age of it. But yeah, this is also on that TVR Club stand, the meeting at Alton Park in 2022. And you may have just noticed this one in the background of the previous photograph, and here we've got F309 OTA. This was, I believe, it started out life as a Tuscan Challenge race car, and now it's been put on the road, which must be very exciting indeed. If you know any more about this or any of the TVRs featured, please pop a note into the comments. Here we have an N-registered Griffith. These and the Chimeras sold alongside each other. I always preferred the slightly less fussy styling of this. You can just see a Chimera on the right hand side there, but I always preferred the slightly smoother front of the Griffith. Back to Alton Park, G545 YPV. That's another one of the S series cars. These typically had the clone V6 engine, either 2.8 or 2.9 litre, and they were built from 86 through to 1994. Back to something a little bit older now, and according to that information board, we have here a 1965 TVR Griffith 200, a race prepared car on mini lights, left-hand drive as well. Back to one of the Sunday morning meets, not too far away from here, and another example of the Cerberus. I'm assuming this is another Speed 6 car, and there's a Chimera, late Chimera alongside it. Back to a bit of race action here. We've got a 76 PRT, another example of the TVR Grand Tourer Mark III. This particular classic car dates to 1963. There's a lineup, a brace of TVR Grand Tourers there, behind a pair of Triumph TR4s in fact. This was part of the Keep GTS race series from a few years back. Is this series still going? I wouldn't mind knowing actually, because it's a long overdue a visit to go and watch some of these cars racing. Fantastic fun. Back to that TVR Club stand, we've got an R-registered TVR Chimera here. It's removable roof panel, stowed away somewhere in the boot, I imagine. Here's a real oddball TE2. There's the registration of this particular car. This was at the Chumley Pageant of Power, quite a few years ago now. Sadly, this event no longer takes place. It was a bit like a Goodwood Festival of the Speed for the North, but yeah, that was a really nice event, but marred often by very poor weather. There's a side view of the same car. I believe this started out as a TVR Grand Tourer. It does have some Goodwood race history and so on, and the bodywork was much modified in later years. If you could tell me what exactly it is we're looking at here, that would be great. Nice 300 SL in the background as well. Here we have two photographs of a very rare TVR Tasman, one of the open top cars in black and gold, very in period, very in keeping, but you don't see too many of these anymore, especially in good condition. So this one looked really smart at an evening pub meet that we went to just 2 or 3 months back. Different meeting but the same car, the rear 3/4 view, so I thought I'd include a couple of photos of it, as these Tasmans don't pop up all that often now, so it's great to see this one in really nice clean condition, still with the original decals down the side. Okay, and W169EOL, here we got a TVR Tuscan, one of the Speed 6 powered cars. Really great looking cars, you know, I mean, sometimes the build quality was a little bit questionable on the TVRs, but there's no doubting there was such eye-catching designs. Hopefully the new mooted car will actually enter production sometime. Here we've got OFR 940M. A couple of photos of this one. This one dates to December 1973. It's got the 3-litre V6 Ford Essex engine, which makes it, I think, a 3000M or possibly a 3000ML, if that's a wooden dashboard that I can see. The ML was a short series that was produced between 73 and 74, bit of a higher spec car. And here's the same car front end with the bonnet removed, bit of preparation going on to its engine under the bonnet there. Really clean car, this one. Next up in this collection of TVRs, a very sad looking TVR Cerbera. This one happened to be in a scrapyard that I was having a wander around, taking a few photographs, and this was dumped in the corner, looking very sorry for itself. The scrapyard's long since been cleared and closed down, so don't ask me if it's still there. As you can see, it's had a little bit of trauma at the back end, but it does give you an idea of what the space frame chassis looks like at the back of these particular cars. Obviously fibreglass bodywork, you can see that there. Yeah, not a pretty sight. Back to Alton Park, and the somewhat happier sight is this glorious TVR Griffith. What a beautiful blue that is. Must be my favourite colour for these particular cars. These and Chimeras in dark metallic blue just look fantastic, I think. Almost halfway through, and there's an interior view of the same car. Really nicely turned out example, this one. Sometimes they can start looking a bit frayed inside. Often the case with these low volume built cars, but this one in particular looks in really clean condition. Bit older now, DAH414K. That's a beautiful red, complete rally wheels TVR Vixen. Either one of the Series 2 or 3 cars, I think. Now those vents on the front wings there, those are of a contemporary Ford Zephyr, one of the big old Mark IV Zephyr Zodiacs, if I remember correctly. There's a rear 3/4 view of the same car. Really nice. The K-Reg points to it being a late 71 or early 1972 registered car. Back to that morning meet that I went to a little while back in 2022, and we've got another example of the TVR Chimera. Again, like I say, the late ones seem to have these fared in headlights with the covers over them, a bit very similar to the TVR Griffith. Well, this is certainly an eye-catching machine. TVR 54G is the registration. This is a TVR Sagaris. These were only built from about 2005 to 2006. Pretty wild looking car. Bit of a rortier version of the T350. As with many of these later TVRs, there's a rear view. They had the Speed 6 engine, around 406 brake horsepower or thereabouts when they were new. But yeah, there's no mistaking that for anything else. Is that a spoiler just at the bottom of the back rear window? I'm not quite sure what that is. Bit odd looking appendage, but yeah, what a wild looking car that is. pair of TVR Chimeras here pulling into that meet. In the foreground, W25 TVR. TVRs must be the cars that most often have private registrations allocated to them with their manufacturer's name on the plate itself. TVR, of course, short for Trevor Wilkinson. Now, a TVR Tamar. This is a bit of a beauty from the 1970s, or about 1976 to be precise. Really smart. I've got a mismatched set of wheels on this one. Not quite sure why that would be. Perhaps it was a puncture or something like that. But yeah, very rare sight indeed. 3-litre V6 powered. This one registered in April 1977, and you can see the opening rear hatch on this car. The 3000M, on which this was based, had the fixed rear window, but I think it was the Tamar that introduced the lift-up rear hatch, and that must make it a whole lot more practical. Really good little car. Another TVR Griffith here, this one on a T registration. It's about 1999 or thereabouts. Another race prepared car here in the Equipe GTS race series, Alton Park. I'm guessing this is probably another Grand Tourer. The same venue, but a road car this time, E175 TVR. There's a TVR Chimera, of course, again with the roof removed. Nice rare Ford Granada in the background as well, a Mark I Granada Coupe. You don't see too many of those, and the Mark II Transit camper alongside isn't particularly common either. Anyway, back to TVRs, and we've got a bright yellow TVR Chimera here. Really nicely turned out example with those faired in headlight covers, which I do think look the part on these. Two photos now of J401HMW. This is one of the S-Series cars, or a 290S to be precise. You could get these with 2.8 and later 2.9 litre engines. Really good car. There's a Chimera in the background as well. But if the Chimera or one of the wedges was a bit OTT, one of these would be a great alternative, I think. Fibreglass body, of course, so it should go quite well, being lighter than had it been bodied in steel. Of course, there's a steel chassis hiding away underneath, so just keep an eye on that. A TVR Griffith here. Registration also inspired by the manufacturer's name, T11VER. From the same angle but a different venue. This was down at Silverstone, a couple of TVRs, right, in fact 4 of them if you look closely. In the foreground, the bright yellow TVR. I'm guessing this is a TVR 3000M. It's a convertible, obviously late 1970s. Don't see too many of those, most of them seem to be fixed heads, so nice to see that one. And a very eye-catching colour for this Chimera. The story is that Peter Wheeler's dog took a bite out of the styling model when they were developing the Chimera, and that's how that particular corner ended up on the design where the indicators are there. It was his big dog took a chunk out of it and they decided to leave it like that. Back over to Alton Park, got a few more TVRs here, and the main car in the photo is a 390 SE, which is sort of an upgraded version of the older 350, slightly larger version, but still a Rover V8 engine underneath it all. Now, you might need to help me out with this one. I'm not very good at identifying these TVRs. I think this is a TVR Griffith 400, built from 64 to 67, but I can't quite be sure on that. So please let me know in the comments if I've got this or any of the other ones wrong, because it's a bit of a minefield trying to identify TVRs. Now, W21 TVR, that's another Tuscan Speed 6. Like I was saying before, many of especially the earlier TVRs, they sort of evolved year on year, slight changes here and there, and it's quite easy to get caught out when you're trying to identify these cars, so all corrections very much welcome, please. There's a rear view of the same car, that Tuscan Speed 6, albeit at a different location, Alton Park. Just thought I'd show the rear view of it. Very distinctive, quite a curvy rump on this particular car. Very different to the Chimera that's alongside it and the S in front. Now let's go back to about 1970 or thereabouts. FGC 4J, that's a 1970 TVR Vixen. And again, it's got those forward vents on the front wing there. Really nice car, as is that Volvo Amazon on mini lights parked alongside it. Another race prepared car here. I think this is a Tuscan. Just look at the engine location, well back under the windscreen almost, and all that plumbing, the pipe work for the exhausts and so on. That's a pretty wild installation. The more you look at that, the crazier it looks. But you know, I'm guessing this is maybe fairly common in race cars, but wow. Now, we've got another example of the T350T, T for Targa. Like I said before, they did the coupe version as well, but this car has the lift-out Targa roof panels. Very nice indeed. Another of Blackpool's finest, G225FOO, is another one of the S-Series cars, so 2.8 or 2.9 litre engine. Very nice indeed. I could quite happily own one of these. I often say that, but I think these would make for a really nice car. This would be a bit of a handful, I think, if it was on the road. And car number 761 is another racing TVR Tuscan, from what I can tell. There's that silver car alongside it in the background that we saw a few moments ago. But yeah, I remember these on TV when there was a whole series just for these cars racing against each other. Staying at Alton Park for a minute, we've got MEX4C. I had to look this one up. This is a 1965 TVR Griffith. As I was talking about the Band the Bomb style Mark 1 Cortina rear lamps, this car's got them fitted to it. Back to road cars and another pair of TVI car mirrors. These were so popular back in the day. A bit of a more of a road oriented car as opposed to racing or sort of fast road work. These were a bit more comfortable, a little bit more calmer to drive on a regular basis by all accounts. Now J67 VOK, that number plate makes it look older than perhaps it is. This is another one of the S-Series cars. Chimera, this time in green. This one's on a V plate, so about 1999. If you've got a favourite in all these cars, please let me know in the comments, or if you've owned a TVR and never would own one again, please let me know why. It's always interesting to hear or read your ownership experiences of the cars that feature. Now this is an oddball one. There's two photos of this car, FRN 111W. Now I think this is one of the revised TVR Tasmans, the Series 2 car. But I think that's what it is, at least, although the fuel filler cap did move around a little bit on these. I've seen photos of them in slightly closer to the passenger door. There's a front view of the same car. Now other photos I've seen of these have big vents on the bonnet. Now this car doesn't appear to have those. So what is it we're looking at here? My guess is a Tasman S2 or possibly the later 280i, but I think it's a Tasman. But yeah, please let me know. F6 TVR, a lot more recent, another example of the Tuscan, and there's a Chimera parked alongside it there, a silver one. Back down to race retro. This was quite a few years ago. We've got GVB 822D. That's an example of a race prepared TVR Grand Tourer. You can see a pretty substantial roll cage in the back there. Like I said, later cars had a lift-up rear hatch, but this one didn't. The rear three-quarter view of a really nicely turned out TVR Chimera in my favourite shade of blue. Still a few classic TVRs to go in this particular video. Please have a look at the rest of the channel before you disappear. Now this was at Alton Park in 2022. Now what is it? I think this is another Griffith, but I could be wrong. Please let me know. Beautiful car, but going off the strips on the side of the bonnet, which look like those on photos I've seen elsewhere of Griffiths. That's what I think it is, but yeah, I could well be wrong. A lot more recent, very high-catching colour scheme, MY02 TVR. This is a Tuscan, another Speed 6 powered TVR Tuscan. Oh, back to that scrapyard again. Sorry folks, a bit distressing, but yes, we've got a well stripped S-Series car here. Obviously reached the end of the road, but clearly had donated much of its running gear to keep other cars on the road, so I suppose that's not all bad. But yeah, it's always a shame when you see a nice car end its days in that way. And here we have a 1998 TVR Griffith in bright yellow. This was taking part on a classic and sports car road run a few years ago in the locality. Popped over and photographed many cars driving past, and amongst them this bright yellow Griffith. Back to the wedges. This was an evening meet organised by a motor club not too far from here, and we have a blue TVR 350i. Like I said before, 3.5 litre Rover V8 engine under its bonnet. Just a couple more cars to go in this particular collection. DGP 7028, that is a 1970 TVR Tuscan. Very smart indeed. It's got one of the old style Tudor Webasto sunroofs as well. So I imagine it gets quite warm in that cabin, so the sunroof would be a great relief, I would imagine, just to let some of the heat out. And here, rounding out this collection of TVR car photographs, we have a glorious 1996 TVR Griffith 500. And that wonderful car rounds out this tribute and collection of photographs of TVRs of the 1950s through to the 2000s, and hopefully in future we'll see new TVRs being produced as well. Thank you very much for watching. More videos along very soon, so bye for now.